You may be wondering the reason behind the name Women in Black. Today we are wearing black to commemorate the lives of Indigenous male youth that have been lost due to suicide. We are about to watch a video that can be emotionally triggering for some. Therefore, we ask you reach out for the support of a friend or colleague should you need to.
If these were non-Aboriginal children, all the resources would be in their schools. When they're Aboriginal children, well, hey, you can take a number and stand in line. And meanwhile, kids are dying every day.
It was just like a time bomb waiting to explode, and I think we're in that crisis situation right now.
Really difficult situation involving unemployment, a mixture of poverty, a real sense of hopelessness involving young people, but then also people throughout their years.
Watching this video is heartbreaking, and even more disheartening is that all over Canada, Indigenous people are dying by suicide at a rate between 5 to 25 times that of Canada's non-Indigenous population. This chart shows another example of a region in Canada that has alarmingly high rates of suicide for Indigenous male youth. This chart shows that youth aged 10 to 29 years of age in Labrador have the highest rates of completed suicide compared to other averages. It's important that we address issues within Canada's Indigenous youth population, as today's youth become the fathers and grandfathers of the future. The innovation we have for you today is in response to the UNRSD call to action. What has been the impact of different strategies and approaches towards mental health in lower income countries? To make this closer to home, we have altered the call slightly, more specifically to answer what are the different strategies and approaches towards the mental health of Indigenous male youth populations in Canada. This is an issue that is more close to home for us and that we believe we can truly make change in. We chose to focus on just males because of the First Nation perspective on health and wellness. According to this model, all people are connected by their relationships, and that forms the essential center or the human being. Therefore, in order to target wellness, we need to look at the relationships that men are involved in and the various amount of people that they affect throughout their daily lives. This in turn influences the entire community. Based on the findings from our rapid review, we found that Indigenous males were more vulnerable because of the following: intergenerational trauma from their families' involvement in residential schools, a lack of role models, lack of education, addiction, damaged cultural identity, racism, as well as low levels of community connectedness. Our innovation idea to address the Indigenous youth suicide crisis is something that's been scientifically proven to work in increasing belonging, self-confidence, and self-efficacy: theater. You may be wondering what Indigenous theater would look like. Well, as mentioned by an Indigenous man, Jacob Carpenter, our health and wellness or healing is grounded in our connection to the land, education regaining, and the practice of our cultures. Therefore, it's important that throughout this theater program, we always consult with the Indigenous people themselves so that we can ensure that we are making a solution that is actually meaningful to them and that provides weight to reconciliation. Our innovation idea is a theater-based intervention program that focuses on enhancing the self-esteem of participants, building mental health resiliency, and fostering cultural connections between Indigenous elders and the Indigenous youth. With the help of Indigenous mental health experts, we plan to create a safe space for the male youth to understand who they are by acting out the culturally informative scenes written by their elders. This aligns with our theory of change because we hope to create a community connection that raises public awareness of Indigenous-related issues through theater. We plan to record the theater programs and then put them onto an online database so that we can use them as a record of storytelling for years to come. This also helps it to be accessible remotely, so various areas in Canada can all benefit from the great resources that are created in this theater. We see these kinds of videos being useful to classroom teachers as a way of instruction, to the general public for overall education, and also as a corporate tool for professional development, which we'll talk about further. We also plan to live stream some of the theater productions so that people can see what goes on in our theater and also the importance of theater in healing.
We recognize our innovation is not immune to potential external factors. The lack of interest from the Indigenous community or the general public could cut our innovation short. Practical barriers such as the lack of theater space or the shortage of mental health care professionals could limit the quality of our program. This could be exacerbated if we lack funding and support from large institutions such as schools and companies whose students and employees are an audience we want to cater to. Lastly, in the light of current COVID-19 situation, unforeseen natural disasters and pandemics could largely disrupt the execution of our program. With these external factors in mind, how could we possibly mitigate some of them? Well, one of the most crucial external factors is the lack of interest from Indigenous youth. In order to combat this, we plan to create a social movement using social media with the help of our student staff. TikTok videos, Instagram stories, and Facebook ads can all help to generate a digital following. And combining these with a meaningful hashtag, we can increase the chances of trending our campaign to increase awareness, reduce stigma, and improve the mental well-being of the participants and those who are watching. As technology is highly accessible nowadays, even those from lower SES and those of us practicing social distance at home could access our theater content through social media and our online database. Enrollment in post-secondary education is often inaccessible for Indigenous youth that come from lower-income households, and a lacking access to transportation or job opportunities can hold them back. To increase educational opportunities and to incentivize participants to attend our theater program, we would also offer scholarship opportunities for Indigenous youth participants. How are we going to sustain this scholarship program, you may ask? Well, we would be presenting our innovation idea and our theory of change to the government in order to secure funding and apply for grants that are applicable to our innovation. Additionally, we'll be partnering up with businesses and corporations for sponsorships that could provide further monetary support for our program. Now let's look at our evaluation plan. In the short term, we'll focus on the promotion of our theater program. Outcomes such as increased number of participants, as well as increased self-esteem and overall psychological well-being are key indicators to our success. To measure for the number of participants in our program, we would track enrollment numbers, and for those who withdrew, we would host a focus group by doing an online feedback survey. This way, we hope to identify what reasons there were for withdrawal and formulate ways to reduce barriers to the program. We will also compare the change in self-esteem and overall psychological well-being in participants before and after the theater program by administering a self-report survey online with monetary incentives. This self-report survey will be an all-in-one combined questionnaire that draws from various psychological assessments such as the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale and Reese Scale of Psychological Well-Being. In the medium term, we're hoping to see greater community involvement as well as greater Indigenous enrollment in post-secondary institutions. Ultimately, we would like to strengthen Indigenous cultural identity and improve their sense of self-worth. At this point, we would administer our self-report survey as a final check-in to see if the effects of the theater program are sustained even after completion. From the Reese scales of psychological well-being, the measures of environmental mastery and the positive relations with others would serve as important indicators of how well the participants are connected to their community. The measures of personal growth as well as purpose in life would see if post-secondary have positively impacted them. Lastly, the measures of self-acceptance and autonomy are evaluative of whether the Indigenous male youth have acquired an improved sense of self-worth. Finally, our ultimate goal for systems change in the long run is to reduce the rate of suicide, incarceration, and crime while increasing the rate of Indigenous employment and establish a sense of trust in community relationships. In conclusion, large community suicides are a problem, and a problem we as a country must address. Our Indigenous population, and more specifically, Indigenous male youth, are suffering from unseen, unaddressed causes. By reviving and revising the theater innovation that has been utilized with the purpose of increasing one's belonging, self-efficacy, and self-confidence, our social innovation will enable us to increase public awareness with the hopes of eventually integrating the greater community, including key players such as elders, theater tropes, schools, and the community as a whole. By integrating the greater community, this gives us the opportunity to continue to strengthen Indigenous youth's perceptions of themselves and establish a sense of community while reducing the rate of suicide, incarceration, and crime. We understand that at this time our project is just an idea, but with your support, we can ensure this idea becomes a viable solution. We can begin the social change that our community needs in order to keep youth healthy physically and mentally. The youth of today are our future tomorrow, and to ensure a healthy and successful future, we must come together and support our most vulnerable populations. As Gandhi once said, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable, and we ask you to join us on this journey. Thank you, and stay healthy.